My name is Joyce Chun, and Thanksgiving, that beautiful, twisted holiday wrapped in cranberry glaze and false smiles, was the day my world split in two. The day I stopped pretending. The day I made a decision that would unravel the lies one forkful at a time. We were at David's family home in Savannah, Georgia, a pristine, colonial-style house with white columns and wide porches, the kind that looks like it was built on honor and tradition. But I knew better. That house was built on secrets, cover-ups, and money soaked in quiet deceit. I'd married into it 6 years ago, and from day one I was an outsider. The New England girl, the daughter of a Navy man with rough hands and a mother who died too young. I wasn't one of them, not old money, not Southern, not silent. And that's what they hated most. The dining room was suffocating with tension long before the turkey was carved. The walls were a museum of portraits, stiff-jawed ancestors glaring down as if they were judging who'd make it through dinner without a scandal. At the head of the table was Evelyn Chun, my mother-in-law, sitting straight-backed in a pearl-colored blouse that probably cost more than my first car. She wore her judgment like perfume. To her right, Lauren, David's sister, tapped at her phone with her manicured nails, more interested in Instagram than Grace. And across from her was Chase, the family idiot, scooping sweet potato casserole like it was going out of style. Then came him, David, my husband. The man who used to tell me I was his whole world. He leaned back in his chair, cradling a glass of Pinot Noir, and smiled. That political smile. The one he used when cameras were on or when he wanted something. I'd seen that smile enough times to know manipulation, when it slid out of his mouth. Then he asked it. Loud, clear, directed at me. Honey, why haven't we paid back the $80,000 loan from Dad's life insurance? The air went still. Even the fireplace seemed to hush. I set my fork down gently. The clink against the china echoed like a warning shot. Then I turned. First to Evelyn, who immediately stiffened like a corpse preparing for burial, and then to David, my voice calm, sharp, and cold. Funny you should ask that, David. Why don't you tell everyone what you did with that money in Italy? The room didn't just fall silent. It fell dead. Evelyn blinked, her lips parted in stunned paralysis. Chase dropped his fork, mouth half open. Lauren finally looked up from her phone, and David? David turned white, not pale, but the kind of white that drains from a man when the walls start closing in. I didn't blink, didn't flinch, because I knew exactly what I was doing. That money? The $80,000 David swore we were using to pay down debt and invest in a marketing firm. He claimed he was building in Atlanta. It never made it to any firm. 3 weeks ago, I found a folder on his laptop labeled Florence. Inside were wire transfers, multiple ones, all made out to a woman named Caterina Rossi. That name is seared into my brain now, the Italian mistress. She's beautiful, of course. Porcelain skin, thick dark hair, lips always parted just enough to promise ruin. I saw the photos. The ones David thought he'd deleted. The two of them on a Vespa, in a villa, in bed. He told her he was going to leave me. Told her she was the love he'd always waited for. I read every email. Every lie, but it wasn't the infidelity that broke me. I could have handled another woman. I've handled far worse. What broke me, what ignited the fire, was the realization that David didn't just betray me. He planned to erase me. The money wasn't just about her. It was about starting a new life without me. He was building a parallel future, siphoning funds into her name, into secret accounts. Like I was some old winter coat he could drop off at Goodwill. He was trying to cut me out of the business, out of the family, out of the legacy I helped build. So I watched him. I studied. I followed his patterns. Then I found the burner phone hidden beneath the winter gloves in the glove box. One that pinged every night to an Italian number, hers, and suddenly everything made sense. The long business trips, the missing funds, the fake invoices. David thought I was stupid, or worse, obedient. But he forgot where I came from. I was raised by a man who spent 20 years in the Navy and a mother who worked 2 jobs and never once asked for help. I was taught to survive, to fight, and to never, ever, let someone else write my ending. I leaned forward slightly, locking eyes with David as he began to stammer. Joyce, I don't think this is the time, or, don't worry, I cut in. The loan's being handled. Just not in the way you think. That's when Evelyn gasped. Her wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor, red soaking into the ivory rug like blood from a fresh wound. David scrambled to help her. I didn't move. Because this was the beginning of the end. His, not mine, and I wasn't done. They had underestimated me for too long. Treated me like some accessory to their wealth, a placeholder at the table. But I had power now, knowledge, and something far more dangerous than proof or money. I had rage, and I wasn't afraid to use it. So I sat there, hands folded, smiling, not because I won, but because he never saw the war coming, and I was just getting started. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But I wasn't interested in serving dinner anymore. I was sharpening the knives. That night, the Thanksgiving wreckage still fresh in everyone's mouths, David stormed into our guest room like a bull on fire. He slammed the door hard enough to rattle the antique mirror on the wall, Evelyn's heirloom, gilded in gold and delusion. His face was flushed, veins pulsing in his neck like a man on the verge of losing control. He reeked of wine, turkey, and shame. And he made the mistake of thinking that was going to intimidate me. "Are you insane, Joyce?" he barked, teeth clenched. "You embarrassed me in front of my entire family." I didn't look at him. I stood at the vanity, applying my lipstick. Crimson, the same shade Katerina wore in that photo. The one in our bed, with our sheets, her hands wrapped around the man who promised me forever. "Did I?" I said lightly, blotting my lips with tissue. "I thought I was just answering your question." He took a step closer, heat radiating from him like a furnace about to blow. "Don't play games with me." And finally, I turned. "I'm not playing," I said, meeting his eyes without a flicker of fear. "I'm executing." The color drained from his face. He was expecting tears, pleading, maybe even slaps or silence. What he didn't expect was strategy. Because while he was lying, cheating, and stealing, I'd been watching. While he thought I was decorating the house and baking banana bread, I was building a war chest. And now it was time to open it. He sat on the edge of the bed, running a hand through his hair like a man trying to wake from a nightmare. "Joyce." I made a mistake. I tilted my head. "No, David, you made a decision. And now it's my turn." I almost felt sorry for him in that moment. Almost, but not enough to stop what I had already started. The truth is, the affair wasn't even the sharpest knife. What really sliced through me was what I uncovered buried beneath those transactions. Because once I traced the money trail to Florence, to Katerina, I also found the wire transfers that didn't go to her. They went to himself. In pieces, quiet, controlled. And all from accounts connected to Chun and Son Timber, the company I helped build from the ground up. Let me make one thing clear. I was never a trophy wife. I was the architect, the strategist, the one who pulled the company out of the marketing dark ages and into the digital world. David loved to show me off at events. My brilliant wife, Joyce. But behind closed doors, he made sure I never had equity. Just credit. Enough to keep me content, never enough to give me control. Until Harold, David's father, changed that. 3 years ago, Harold pulled me aside after a fundraiser and handed me a leather-bound folder.
"This is for you," he said. "You're cut. You earned it."
Inside were documents, proof of silent shares. 10% of the company, in my name. To be triggered upon Harold's death, per a separate will, one he never told Evelyn about. I cried when I read it. It was the first time someone in that family had acknowledged my worth. And then, Harold died. Heart attack in his sleep, they said. But when the money came through, the life insurance, the asset shift, my name was nowhere. The will that surfaced was different, newer, a cold signature, revised terms. My shares, gone. At the time I grieved, but grief turned to suspicion. Suspicion turned to fire, and fire turned to proof. I hired a lawyer, a friend from college. She found the original will in the digital archive of Harold's estate attorney. Buried under outdated tax records, my shares were real, and the new will? Forged, sloppily, at that. The signature had been traced, literally. The pressure points were identical to one Harold signed on a Christmas card the year before. Evelyn's handwriting was on the witness line. Chase had notarized it with an expired license. They weren't just liars, they were criminals. David looked up at me, his voice low. You don't want to go to war with my family.
I almost laughed. David, I said, stepping closer. I am the war.
He didn't respond. Just sat there, crumbling under the realization that I had more power than he ever imagined. I leaned in and whispered, You tried to erase me. You tried to build a new life without me, funded by my money, my labor, and a dead man's trust. And you think you can scare me back into silence? He stood suddenly, his fists clenched. What do you want, Joyce? Money? Revenge? What? My voice dropped into a whisper. Everything. I wanted everything he'd taken, and then some business. The house in Charleston. The respect I'd earned but never received. I wanted Evelyn humiliated, Chase disbarred, and David. I wanted him to feel what it's like to be invisible. Just like he tried to make me. I've already contacted a forensic accountant, I added, and a journalist. And an investigator in Florence who knows all about your business trip last spring. He looked like he was going to be sick. You're bluffing. I smiled. Try me. Then I walked past him, opened the door, and let the air from the hallway flood in like the start of a new season. I didn't slam it behind me. I didn't need to. I wanted him to hear the calm in my steps. Because I wasn't just his wife anymore. I was the ghost he summoned. And now? Now I was going to haunt every move he made, until there was nothing left but his shadow. I left Savannah the next morning with nothing but a Louis Vuitton weekender bag and the fire of war in my lungs. The same bag David gave me for our 5th anniversary, trying to distract me from forgetting our dinner reservation, and now it was carrying the tools of his destruction. The Sean mansion shrank in my rear view like a dying monument. I didn't look back, not once. You don't mourn a battlefield. You leave it scorched. David didn't chase me. He knew better. I think some small, flickering part of him finally understood the scale of what he had awakened in Evelyn. She conveniently took to bed, claiming exhaustion. I imagine it was the weight of seeing her house of pearls, pretenses, and property start to collapse under the weight of one woman's rage. My rage. She had mistaken quiet for weakness. She forgot I was born in Boston. The blood in my veins was northern ice and ancestral gunpowder. I landed back home with snow crunching under my boots, the sky bruised gray with early December clouds. Boston welcomed me like a co-conspirator, offering its chill as armor. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. That kind of grief was behind me now. This phase was surgical. I headed straight to the brownstone on Beacon Hill, Clarissa Ashcroft's place. Harvard law graduate, private practice bulldog, and my oldest friend. Clarissa didn't do small talk. She did results. She poured me a glass of Merlot, lit a cigarette from a Cartier case, and leaned back in her velvet chair like a queen ready for war. Joyce, darling, she said with a grin, you're not angry, you're dangerous. I like that. By midnight, we had filed the lawsuits: fraud, breach of contract, will forgery, embezzlement, charges that could strip David of his business, Evelyn of her inheritance, and Chase, the ever-loyal lapdog, of his notary license and what little credibility he'd ever had. Clarissa didn't flinch. Neither did I. Legal war takes time, depositions, discovery, strategy, but revenge? That can be served much faster, in measured, elegant courses. Like a tasting menu of vengeance. Course 1, public humiliation. 2 weeks later, I walked into the Chun and Son quarterly investor meeting. It was held in the company's glass and marble headquarters in Atlanta, under chandeliers paid for with trust funds and generational arrogance. I wore all black, high heels, a custom-cut blazer, hair swept into a power bun. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like an executioner. At my side was Clarissa, carrying a manila folder thick with evidence. Wire transfers from David's secret Milan account, falsified invoices, copies of Harold's original will, and the last letter he ever wrote me, a letter that proved he intended for me to inherit 10% of the company. His handwriting was unmistakable, his respect for me undeniable. The boardroom buzzed when we entered. Whispers, furtive glances. David wasn't present. He'd resigned due to personal health concerns, 2 days prior. Coward. I stood at the head of the table and placed the folder down. I'm here, I said, voice clear, to reclaim what was stolen from me. Milton James, the chairman, gray-haired, half-retired banker with a conscience barely clinging to life, opened the folder. He read in silence, his eyebrows lifted. His fingers trembled. When he looked up, he said just one thing. Jesus Christ. Then came the vote. Emergency. Private. Unanimous. David Chun was officially removed as acting CEO. Course 2, Divide and Conquer. I called Caterina Rossi the next day. She answered in lilting Italian, her voice as soft and sweet as her photos made her seem. Signora Chun, she said. I've been expecting this. I didn't curse her, I didn't scream. She wasn't the cause. She was a weapon David had used, and she didn't even know it. I told her the truth. David had listed her name on fraudulent invoices tied to an offshore shell corporation. The tax authorities in Florence would be coming. Fast. She went quiet. I let her process it. Why are you telling me this? She finally asked. Because I'm not him, I said. And you deserve a chance to escape before the house burns down. There was a silence. Then a whisper of regret. I believed him, she said. I thought he was ... sincere. I almost laughed. He's never been sincere a day in his life. Sometimes revenge doesn't need cruelty. Sometimes mercy cuts deeper. Course 3, The Matriarch's Fall. Evelyn called me. Her voice, normally honeyed with faux grace, was dry now. Strained. Joyce, she said, we need to talk privately. We met in her Manhattan penthouse, 34th floor, dripping in marble and mirrors. She poured me a whiskey. The good kind, Glendronach. She didn't even blink as she tried to spin a new web. You drop the charges, she said, and I'll see what I can do about reinstating you into the trust. I sipped the whiskey. Let the burn sink in. Then I looked her in the eye. You already stole the money, I said. But you tried to steal something far more valuable, my silence. She froze. And for that, I continued, I'll make sure the Chun name becomes synonymous with scandal. I stood, left the drink half finished, and walked away. Because the final course hadn't been served yet, and I intended to make them all choke on it. 3 months passed. 3 quiet, violent, beautifully destructive months. When people talk about revenge, they always think it ends with a bang. A scream, a body on the floor. But the truth is, the most devastating revenge is silent, precise, not a weapon in the hand, but a pen in the right palm and the law at your feet. By January, Chun and Sun Timber no longer existed. The company had been renamed Raven Ridge Industries, and I sat at the head of the board, my name engraved on the office door where David's once hung. The first meeting under my leadership was held in the penthouse conference suite overlooking the Charles River in Boston. I walked in wearing black and steel, custom, tailored, sharp enough to cut glass, and I watched as the men who once chuckled behind my back now stood when I entered. They addressed me as Madam Chair. Harold would have been proud, or terrified. Maybe both. The media had done its job. Headlines flooded the feeds for weeks. Chun legacy crumbles under scandal. The mistress, the money, and the woman who took it all back. And my personal favorite, the empire she burned to rebuild. David had become a pariah. He moved into a crumbling apartment in Hoboken, New Jersey, a 1-bedroom with stained carpet and a view of a brick wall. I knew because I hired a man to photograph the lease. That same man reported seeing David in a pawn shop 2 weeks later, trying to sell a Rolex engraved with my initials on the back. A gift from our first anniversary. His bank accounts were frozen, his assets seized, and every corporate contact he had was now ghosting his emails. The last time he called me, I let it ring 12 times, just so he'd hear the silence. I never picked up. Caterina Rossi had been smarter. When I warned her, she believed me. She turned over every receipt, every file, and every message. She handed the Italian authorities enough evidence to make David a target of international financial fraud charges. In return, she walked away with immunity and a bruised heart. I sent her a check for $5,000 with a simple note. For the wine you spilled, the bedsheets you borrowed, and the man you no longer need, consider it settled. Joyce. She cashed it within 2 days and vanished into Florence. I hope she's doing something better with her life. If not, I don't care. Then came Evelyn. The woman who once ran garden clubs, hospital boards, and charity galas like a queen on her throne. Now, she was resigning from everything, one headline at a time. The country club dropped her name from the marble plaque in the women's locker room. The hospital board voted her out due to conflict of interest. And the charities? They quietly stopped answering her calls. She made a last-ditch attempt at redemption. A media interview, local news, tears dabbed gently with a handkerchief. She called me confused, claimed I had twisted the memory of her husband for personal gain. But by then, the public already saw her for what she was, the woman who helped her son forge a will to erase another woman's future. The next week, she was spotted at a plastic surgery clinic in Palm Beach, wrapped in bandages, trying to erase the face America now recognized as deceit. She never contacted me again. And me? I bought a house in Aspen, a 2-story modern architectural dream made of black steel. Warm cedar and floor-to-ceiling windows. It sat high in the Colorado hills, surrounded by silence. The kind of silence that doesn't ask for explanations. The kind that lets you breathe again. It cost $3.6 million. I wired the money in full. I didn't live there all the time. Just when I needed to write, to think, to disappear. It was my fortress of clarity, built on everything I'd clawed back from the people who thought I'd vanish. And still, the world kept asking questions. Do you regret it? Do you ever wish you'd just stayed quiet? What did it cost you? Here's the truth. Revenge doesn't heal you. It doesn't return time. It doesn't hold you at night or pour your morning coffee. But it does clean the slate. It burns away the rot and makes room for something new, something honest, something fully yours. So no, I don't regret it. And for the final touch? That $80,000 loan David asked about at Thanksgiving, the one that started all of this? I paid it back quietly, in pounds. To a dormant UK account Harold had opened back in 1986, the same one Evelyn didn't know existed. I had discovered it months ago while combing through legal archives. He named me the beneficiary in his final private ledger, another secret gift. On the payment receipt I wrote a note, settled, but not forgiven. Joyce, Chun, it was never about the money. It was about principle. About refusing to be silenced. About telling every woman who's ever been erased, betrayed, or reduced to a name on a checkbook that we can write our own stories. I am not a survivor. I am the reckoning. And I am telling you this now, not for sympathy, not for applause, but because one day, you might find yourself across the table from a man like David. Maybe he's wearing a wedding ring. Maybe he calls you babe. Maybe he thinks you'll never find out, but you will. And when you do, I hope you remember my story. I hope you sharpen your fork and smile.